Hi folks, welcome to another episode of the 59th Minute FPL podcast, which is brought to you by Fantasy Football Scouts. I'm Mark McGettigan. You'll find me on Twitter at FPL General. Gameweek 1 is almost complete. It's just Manchester United versus Wolves to go on Monday evening. It was so good to have the Premier League and the FPL back over the weekend. Roll on the next set of fixtures. It's a Friday deadline again this week, but it's 15 minutes earlier than last week, so don't get caught out by that. The deadline is 6:15 UK time, not 6:30pm like last week. In today's episode, I'll do a quick review of Gameweek 1, welcome the first members to this season's 59th Minute Club. Got 3 already. Update the watch list, highlight a few stats that caught my eye, answer listener questions, and finish the pod with captaincy and potential transfers for the weekend. There will be another 59th Minute episode on Friday after the pressers, so make sure you hit subscribe or follow wherever you're listening for that one. A quick review of how the first game week went. Obviously very early days in the season, but nice to get off to a fairly decent start. 67 points with Bruno, Rashford and Luke Shaw to play. I'm not going to mention overall ranks until at least halfway through the season because it doesn't mean very much until then. There was deadline drama on Friday, so I was at Fantasy Football Fest in London. When it got to about 10 to 6, so about 40 minutes before the deadline, I said I'm going to take a short walk back to the hotel, which thankfully was nearby, because I needed some headspace, some reliable internet just to make sure I could get any last minute decisions done. Got back to the hotel, seen the news that John Stones was unlikely to feature. He was in my final draft, so went in and switched him to Luke Shaw, who was on my watch list. Just didn't overthink that one. And then the Gabriel rumours, there was rumours that Gabriel wasn't going to play for Arsenal the following day. I didn't see that news until about 6:27, maybe it was even 6:28. So just 2 minutes before the deadline, had a quick think about it. I said I've got Chilwell first on the bench. Hopefully if Gabriel doesn't play, I'll just get Chilwell in. And I just really didn't want to make a late last minute decision. So like a lot of people, I just left Gabriel in there. And we're just going to have to see what happens. I'll come back to him because there is questions about him. And obviously frustrating that Arteta brought Gabriel on because I didn't get Chilwell's 7-pointer from the bench. But happy to own Chilwell now for the next couple of game weeks. And actually just thankful that he just got the 7-pointer. But who knows, maybe a Shaw, Bruno or Rashford won't turn up on Monday and I might get those Chilwell points yet. So I think everybody in the team delivered so far, apart from Gabriel. So that's a very positive start to the season. Just to give you a heads up in case you don't know the team I went with very quickly, Johnson in goal with a 6-pointer, Gabriel, Shaw and a Stupinan with a 7-pointer, Martinelli, Saka, Rashford and Bruno to play, and up front João Pedro with a 7, Captain Haaland 26 and Watkins with 5, and then on the bench Turner at Forest, Chilwell, Marvellous Nakamba because I'm confident that I'm going to have a marvellous season, and Bayer from Burnley. So I ended up going for kind of a 3-4-3 formation, which can become a 4-4-2 with the 4 strong defenders. So quite glad I did end up making the switch to João Pedro. In the end, basically I couldn't decide which 4-5 defender to go for. I also couldn't decide which 6.5 midfielder to go for, so I just avoided both. And by getting João Pedro, it allowed me to get Luke Shaw and Chilwell alongside Gabriel and Stupinan. So overall, feeling good about the picks in Game Week 1. A very warm welcome to the 59th Minute Club. First of all, a special shout out for Aston Villa's Pau Torres. He didn't even start the game, but when Tyrone Mings went off injured, Pau Torres came on. A few people tagged me in tweets saying this could be a 59th minute appearance because he must have come on around the 30-minute mark. And yes, indeed, Pau Torres becomes one of the first players to join the 59th Minute Club from the bench. That made me very happy on Saturday. A warm welcome also to Bournemouth duo Jadon Anthony and Marco Senesi. They joined Torres as the first 3 players in the club. The club is pretty lonely at the moment, but lads, grab yourselves a drink and we'll hopefully have a few more players joining you next weekend. You never know, maybe we might even get 1 or 2 on Monday night. Moving on to the watch list section of the episode. So long-time listeners will know I update the watch list every week. So when it's basically I have a pre-season watch list of about 25-30 players. When I lock in my team for Game Week 1, I delete all the players on the watch list and then I just update it right after Game Week 1. So 9 games played so far. I've gone through all 18 teams and then I'll do the same for Manchester United and Wolves after that game. and add any players that I think have a chance of coming into my team in the near future. So defenders, first of all, there's not too many, just 3, which tells you I'm quite happy with my defence at the moment. Again, we'll come to Gabriel in the question section. Trent Alexander-Arnold, watching the highlights, seen him get a nice assist for Mo Salah, which thankfully, as a non-owner of both players, was ruled out. But again, it just kind of highlights the potential that Trent has as an FPL prospect. Don't see myself buying him in the next week or two, but always going to be on the watch list if he's not in my team. I went for Ben Chilwell because I trust his fitness more, but it was good to see Reece James on the pitch and playing in a wing-back position as well. Might not always be a wing-back system for Chelsea, but even if it was from time to time, that could be good news for Chilwell and Reece James. So James is on the watch list. I'm probably not going to double up. I was talking to a few people on Friday who were doubling up. Maybe Chilwell was in the starting 11 and Reece James was on the bench. Perfectly viable when you look at Chelsea's fixtures. So Trent's in my mind, Reece James is in my mind. And I thought that one of the standout defenders from the weekend was Rico Henry at Brentford. I watched that Tottenham game. He was one of the best players on the pitch. I thought himself and Basuma were probably the best 2 players on the pitch. Not that Basuma is an FPL option, but Rico Henry certainly is. 4.5, bombing up the wing, getting an assist. Could have a really good season. And again, Brentford have good fixtures. On to the midfielders who've been added to the initial watch list for Game Week 2. Like Trent, if Salah's not in my team, he's always going to be on the watch list as a possible option. Bournemouth at home this week. My plan was always to bank the transfer, so I've got no interest in going and ripping up my team, taking hits to get Salah for the captaincy. On the watch list for now, and we'll come back to him in a couple of weeks possibly. His teammate Luis Diaz also on the score sheet. Some good underlying numbers, which I'll talk about soon. Phil Foden, I was close to going there in Game Week 1. He was in a couple of drafts, but I ended up taking him out when I went for the more 3-4-3 formation with Nakamba rather than a 5th midfielder. Well, a 5th expensive midfielder, that is. Again, I just don't have too much interest in the likes of Foden, Alvarez, Pep. It's just, even the defenders, it was crazy that Diaz, Stones or Gvardiol, none of them played. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise for us just to stay away from Manchester City assets. Again, a question on those later, so I'll come back to them. But Foden's on the watch list, but again, he's probably pretty far down that watch list in terms of possible transfers in. A player that is much more likely to come in soon, and I maybe have some tiny regrets that I didn't go with him Game Week 1, James Maddison. If I did end up in a 5-man midfield, Maddison was very close to being involved. He kind of entered my thoughts in the final week of pre-season, went into a few drafts, and I said, looked at the fixtures, feel like I can go without him the first 2 fixtures, and then maybe come back to him Game Week 3 when Tottenham's fixtures are really good for 3 game weeks on the bounce. Maddison was fantastic for Tottenham, got the 2 assists, could have had even more, just... it's not a flash in the pan. We know what Maddison's been doing for years, FPL-wise. Set pieces, who knows, might even get penalties. Again, that probably will be Heung-min Son, though, I would guess. Son did go off early, though, I think after about 74 minutes. So if that happens often, maybe Maddison gets penalties late in the game if they occur. So Maddison, very near the top of my most wanted list. Again, like I said, probably going to bank a transfer this week. But when it comes to Game Week 3 and 2 free transfers, there's a very good chance Maddison will come in. His teammates, Richarlison, also on the watch list because he's out of position, he's cheap. He didn't have a great game, but again, it was just one game. If he continues to play out of position, and if they don't sign a striker to replace Harry Kane, which they probably will, let's face it, they've got a lot of cash to spend. I've even seen them linked with Mr. Lukaku. He's pretty cheap in FPL. I think, is he around 7 or 7.5? Vaguely remember seeing his name on the Chelsea team when I looked there in pre-season on the FPL website. Richarlison on the watch list, but again, I won't be going there over Maddison unless I see a lot more improvement from the Brazilian. I get a couple of other players now who were under consideration for me in Game Week 1 but didn't make it. Jared Bowen on the score sheet, Mbumo also on the score sheet from the penalty spot, Matoma who got the assist, and Eze who put up excellent numbers, but again, it was caveated, it was against Sheffield United, so we've got to be careful reading too much into one fixture, but Eze's numbers certainly stood out, which I'll talk about soon. Also on the watch list, Diaby at Aston Villa and Solly March, who I think was overlooked in pre-season by myself and by many others. Brighton are just such a good team to watch, goals galore, and I think we're going to have fun with their FPL picks again this season, but quite happy with Estupinan and João Pedro. Probably not looking to triple up until the fixtures improve slightly. So yeah, overall, midfielders, Salah, Diaz, Foden, Maddison, Richarlison, Bowen, Diaby, Bumo, Matoma, Martin, Eze. And then forwards on the watch list, Like Foden, I've added Julian Alvarez, but again, it's more just to keep an eye on things there, see how many minutes he gets. Not looking to buy him anytime soon. Nicholas Jackson at Chelsea posted some good underlying numbers, passed the eye test, so I like him as an option as well. Wissa on the score sheet, he was kind of direct competition for João Pedro for a lot of people, so I know the Wissa owners were sweating after João Pedro scored on the Saturday, but good to see Wissa get his goal on the Sunday. Elsewhere at Luton, I thought Morris was very impressive on penalties, only 5.5, so if there's any issues with João Pedro in the future, I think Morris could be an out route. And finally, 4.5 million forward who got 90 minutes, Osula at Sheffield United. Again, one more for monitoring the minutes. If he continues to get starts and get 90 minutes, if you're in a 3-5-2 formation, Osula will become the best 4.5 million forward. But overall, with the forwards, I'm quite happy with my front three of Haaland, Watkins and João Pedro. I don't see that changing in the next week or two, so I'm just going to monitor these few options over the next few games. So that's the watch list updated ahead of Game Week 2. Like I said, I'll add the United and Wolves players to it after the game on Monday, and I can update on that on next week's episode. It's time to talk about some numbers now. Every Monday morning I jump into the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Having watched all the highlights, watched a few games, it's nice to look at some numbers as well, just to see what they are telling me. So each week on the Monday episode, I'll pull out a few numbers that caught my eye. First up, goalkeeper Leno at Fulham, 9 saves, 3 bonus points, 12 FPL points. He could have another big season. I know it's just one game, but he did score 142 points last year, so we do have a pretty decent sample size with Leno at Fulham. So if you're looking for a goalkeeper, maybe when you play your first wildcard in a couple of weeks, have a look at how Leno is doing over the first chunk of games. Defenders, Estupinan, what a player. 6 chances created, 2 of them big chances. He also had 3 goal attempts, 2 of which were from inside the box, and he was top among defenders for XGI, which is expected goal involvement, with 0.96. Very happy owner here. If you don't have him off the back of the first performance, I would be looking to get him soon. Trippier reminded us what he can do. 4 chances created. When Newcastle's fixtures improve, I think a lot of us will flock back there, even with the price rise. Rico Henry, who's on the watch list, 3 chances created, 2 of them were big chances. Onto the midfielders, Eze at Crystal Palace, huge numbers here, 7 chances created, 8 goal attempts, 5 of those goal attempts were from inside the box, and he also took 5 corners. Again, was against a pretty poor Sheffield United team, so maybe let's see how Eze does Game Week 2 before we jump in. I still favour banking a transfer rather than going and buying Eze. Madison and Pascal Gross both created 6 chances each. Mitoma created a very healthy 5 chances, so all of those players looking good for the numbers also. Again, very, very careful with stats. It's only one game week. It's probably not until we get to maybe 4, 5, 6 game weeks into the season when you might start seeing some patterns that you can rely on in terms of the numbers. But again, it's good to see some of these popular picks that we were considering for Game Week 1 posting good numbers straight out of the blocks. Jared Bowen, 6 goal attempts, 4 shots in the box, and he took 4 corners. And there's seen a few comments from David Moyes saying, basically was saying he was thinking about buying a striker, but he's going to see if Jared Bowen can fill that void. He played up front for Hull back in his Hull days, so we could see Jared Bowen as more of an out of position prospect this season, and those numbers from Game Week 1 are certainly encouraging. Luis Diaz had 4 shots in the box. Julian Alvarez, this one caught my eye because forwards in FPL, when I look at the chances created, they usually don't create too many. It's usually 2, 3 max. But Julian Alvarez created 6 chances. Probably took a few corners, which probably helped them there. Again, just one to keep an eye on. Edwards at Crystal Palace. Again, it was against Sheffield United, but 7 shots in the box. That's very, very good numbers, and got himself on the score sheet. He kind of had a quiet enough campaign last year. And we shared game time with the likes of Mateta and stuff, but hopefully Edward can have a bigger season. Again, if there's any issues with João Pedro in the future, I think Edward is also 5.5. Elsewhere, João Pedro, Jackson and Morris all had 4 shots in the box, and Jackson and Isak both had 3 big chances each. So encouraging numbers for Jackson against Liverpool with 3 big chances. I think if you picked Jackson in Game Week 1, you can confidently hold him for the good fixtures now, and you should get returns from him. So that's the scout stats for Game Week 1. I'll come back to those again in Game Week 2. Before I get stuck into the listener questions, a quick plug for my Patreon. FPL content creation is my full-time job. If you enjoy the podcast and you'd like to support it and me, check out patreon.com/FPL General, or just Google FPL General Patreon and you'll find it. There's also a link on my Twitter, or X, or whatever that app is called nowadays. You'll get extra podcasts, Thursday night live streams, Q&As, team reveals, and much more. Any questions you have about signing up before you do so, send me a DM on Twitter. They are open. Listener questions now. Thank you, as always, to everyone who sent those in. First one from Andy Mack, and the second question from Mark is also related. The biggest question going into Game Week 2 is for Gabriel owners. Andy Mack asks, keep or sell? And Mark comments that it's clearly best to keep him another game week and see if he regains his place. What do you think of whether to start him and risk a one-pointer off the bench versus selecting an alternative if you have one? For example, Rico Henry away to Fulham. So on the first question, keep or sell Gabriel? I think we keep him if we own him. To me, I think there's a good chance he'll come back in against Crystal Palace. I think it was just a tactical decision. It could actually turn out that might be the only game Gabriel misses all season, and it might just have been, nothing to worry about if we held on to him, and he might end up still being a good FPL prospect. If you're like me, most people do try and bank a transfer when they've just built a new team. So I'm still planning to do that. Give Gabriel another game week, and if he does miss out again, then of course we do sell him. But I don't think we need to sell him after just one game week when I value transfers as precious. So Mark's question, and I'm in this boat, what do we do then if we do keep him? Do we start him against Crystal Palace, or do we start an alternative who we've got on the bench? So in my case, I'm going to start Estupiñán again. I'm going to start Chilwell this week. I think it's against West Ham. I just don't think you can bench either of those players. My question then is, do I start Gabriel, who I've got slight concerns about, or do I start Luke Shaw, who's got a fixture against Tottenham, which I don't really like because I would fancy Tottenham to score given how they played in Game Week 1. So that's something I need to weigh up for the rest of the week. I'll come back to it on Friday's episode. But at the moment, I've got Gabriel in my starting 11 because, like I said, I think there's a good chance he comes back in, and I've got more faith in Arsenal for a clean sheet than I do Manchester United in Game Week 2. But as you can tell, I'm conflicted on this one, and I'll weigh that up for the rest of the week. If you've got a Rico Henry against Fulham, I think that's better than Luke Shaw against Tottenham. So I would probably be inclined to play Rico Henry there, given how good he was Game Week 1, bench Gabriel, and then you reassess things in Game Week 3. So I think it's fine to start him if you're like me and you think he comes back in. Also fine to bench him if you've got a decent option that you can replace him with. So very interesting to see how that one plays out. Hopefully we don't have to use a transfer on a defender as early as Game Week 3. Question from Panayots: who is the best Mings replacement? And what to do if you also have Gabriel? Yeah, very unlucky if you have both players. You've got two potential problems in your team straight away when you might have been, not planning on making any transfers in Game Week 2. If you are in this scenario, this is different because you've got potentially two issues. And you might have a 4 million defender there as well that you don't really want to use. So if I own Tyrone Mings, I would sell him this week. I think if you don't have any other problems, keep Gabriel, hope for the best. And yeah, sell Mings because he's Arsenal have just confirmed this morning it's a serious injury. He's going to be out for a long time, so there's no point holding on to him. So I probably would just bite the bullet, get rid of him. Unless you've got three decent defenders you can play this week. But if you're looking short, you probably don't want to go in with Mings and Gabriel to Game Week 2. So the best replacements, I think there's two clear options. If you've got 0.5 in the bank, you get Estupiñán. If you don't have cash in the bank, you go for Rico Henry because he was great Game Week 1. He's just a nice, rock-solid option. And he's got good fixtures for the next 6-7 game weeks as well. Question from Pete: at the start of the season, how patient do you recommend being with Game Week 1 picks that were a bit punty? For example, Richarlison. Certainly give them more than 1 week. Give them at least Game Week 2 and then reassess things. Richarlison was an absolutely viable pick in Game Week 1. Still could turn out to be a great pick. If I owned Richarlison, I wouldn't be knee-jerking. Even if I had 0.5 in the bank, there might be some temptation to go Richarlison to Maddison. But we know FPL, things can flip very quickly. Maddison could get a 2-pointer next week and Richarlison could be on the score sheet. So I would give Richarlison another week, save yourself a transfer, give yourself more flexibility, more information, more stats, and then decide what to do with that position from Game Week 3 onwards. Question from Matthew McLister. Should we be getting on Maddison as soon as possible? I think yes, but I think we can wait until game week 3. He's got Manchester United this weekend, and then it gets really good for Tottenham. They've got a run of 3 games, which is Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United. I don't really want to go into those 3 games without Maddison off the back of his game week 1 performance. So like I said earlier, I'm planning to bank a transfer, and whether I make 1 transfer or 2 transfers in game week 3, I probably will need to make 2 if I want to get Maddison, unless I lose a Martinelli or something like that. But very good chance I will be targeting Maddison for that run of 3 fixtures. Not just for those 3 fixtures. If Maddison performs like he did in game week 1, if he's going to run the show, he could be a season keeper. You could get him, plug him in, one of those glue guys, and you make your transfers elsewhere for the rest of the campaign. So certainly, like I said, Maddison very, very high on my wanted list. Question from Andy Shears. If you see a player you think is bound to rise in price and have a much better few weeks than one of your others in that position, should you get them in now? Or is it better to hold tight and bank a transfer, particularly given you assembled your squad in good faith less than a week ago? Yeah, very important not to overreact to just 1 game week's worth of information, because you put in, good chance you put in weeks and weeks of prep, research, listening to content, watching YouTube, reading stuff, and you were confident about your game week 1 team. So 1 game week doesn't change an awful lot, because the players that performed in game week 1 are not necessarily going to be the players that perform in game week 2. So don't knee-jerk, don't panic. If you're pretty happy with your squad, it doesn't need to be perfect, but if it's decent for game week 2, just roll with it and give yourself another week of info. Now, I've just noted down a few players here, and I was trying to think, what there is probably a few caveats here. If you're hell-bent on a player that you don't have, if you think you made a mistake by not picking them, and if you think they're just going to be absolutely fantastic, then of course you don't have to bank your transfer. And I'm thinking about players like Chilwell, who was getting into incredible positions for Chelsea. I wouldn't like to not own him. I'm quite happy. Obviously, I missed the 7-pointer, most likely, but I'm definitely going to be in my starting 11 for the next few weeks now. Estupinan's another one. When he's got good fixtures, I would feel slightly uncomfortable about not having him. Saka, possibly Maddison, but I think it's okay this week against United. Haaland's an obvious one. If you're one of the... He's over 90% ownership now. Insane. So if you're one of the 9.9% of people that don't have Haaland, you probably should be making the transfer this week or 2 to get Haaland in. And the other one is João Pedro. If you think he's just a great pick and you feel like you missed out, you could go there this week. But Pedro, I wouldn't put Pedro as high as the likes of Chilwell, Estupinan, Saka and Haaland. I think you can probably wait another week on Pedro if you don't have him. And again, it gives you another week to look at the likes of Wissa and Edward and these guys also. It doesn't mean Pedro's the best pick just because he had a good start to the season. So yeah, you've got to weigh it up. Which players do you think you really need? And can you wait until game week 3 for them? In most cases, you can wait 1 game week. Yeah, you shouldn't lose out too much by just being a little bit more patient. But yeah, you'll see a lot of content creators this week saying, don't make a transfer, bank a transfer. But I think us content creators need to remember, some people are missing players that they really, really want. And in that case, I would never stop someone from making a transfer, especially if you feel like you've got a dud option who's not going to do much for you, and you feel like there's a fantastic pick out there. Maybe you don't wait, maybe just go and get them. And maybe they get 10 to 15 points in game week 2. So different ways to look at this, and it's very much team dependent. Question from Harshal. Should I keep Foden or get Maddison? Again, because Maddison's got United, of course he could return against Manchester United, but when you picked Foden in game week 1, you probably didn't pick him just for 1 game week. He got the start. De Bruyne is injured. He'll probably start again game week 2. That's a famous last words when you're dealing with Pep Guardiola, that he'll start game week 2. But hopefully he will if you own him. If I owned Foden and I didn't own Maddison, I think I'd be keeping Foden for 1 more week, seeing how it goes, see how Maddison does again, and then just make the switch game week 3 with a little bit more info. Question from Andrew Sands. Is it too soon to double up on playing 4 million goalkeepers? It's only been 1 week where Turner and Areola... It's only 1 week where Turner and Areola have a difficult fixture. So basically what Andrew's saying here is, if you go Turner and Areola, the fixture rotation is quite nice, probably for the long term. I wouldn't recommend it because Turner's fine at Forest until they sign someone else. If they sign someone else, hopefully they don't. And we've got him as a good option for our benches all season. Areola, basically David Moyes said he's got 2 number 1 goalkeepers. So it doesn't mean Areola is going to play every week. There could be a rotation there. So Areola and Turner as a rotation, I don't think we can do that just yet. Maybe if it gets to game week 4, game week 5, and Areola has started every game, if the transfer window's closed, if Forest haven't signed another keeper, then we can maybe look at the Turner Areola rotation when it comes to the first wild card whenever we play that. But I wouldn't go there yet, and I certainly wouldn't be relying on just Areola if you're looking to buy him as your sole goalkeeper, because you could get a shock some weekend and Fabianski could be back in. Question from William Bain, related question about goalkeepers. Should I start Turner ahead of Pickford in game week 2? So this is similar to my situation. I've got Johnston and Turner, and in my bus team, which I'll talk about soon, the bus team being the team you set for the next game week in case you get hit by a bus during the week. So your captain set and your team sets, a famous phrase coined by the excellent Always Cheating FPL podcast. Start Turner ahead of Pickford? I think I would. If you look at the fixtures, Turner and Forest play Sheffield United at home. Doesn't get much better than that. And then Pickford is away to Aston Villa. I'll always fancy Villa to score when they've got the likes of Watkins and Diaby and all those boys in attack. And then in my scenario, Sam Johnston plays Arsenal. Not expecting a clean sheet there. So I think I will start Turner. And I went into the season with an open mind. Usually I don't rotate goalkeepers. I don't usually rotate 4.5 goalkeepers. But when you've got one of them that's 4 million on your bench, I think it would be silly not to consider the rotation when they do have a good fixture. So there will be a couple of scenarios, I think, where I do start Turner. I'll go by the bookies odds, which I usually do. If Forest have a better clean sheet percentage for the weekend than my goalkeeper, Crystal Palace in this case, I will probably favour that goalkeeper in certain game weeks. So yeah, Turner is probably going to start for me, and I'll probably do the same over Pickford. Just because you went for a set and forget goalkeeper, you can always be flexible with that. You don't have to start a Pickford or a Johnston every week if you've got a Turner. Question from Fly in Yehudi. Are we really going to ignore Newcastle completely? Besides Man City, I see them hammering every other team this season. I don't think I'd go as far as saying they're going to hammer every team this season. It was just one game. They certainly got Aston Villa on a bad day. I don't know what Emery was doing, but defensively they were absolutely all over the place. And I do expect to see an improvement from Aston Villa defensively over the next couple of weeks, especially when Pau Torres comes in and starts starting games rather than coming in off the bench. It was all just a bit of a mess. And Newcastle at home, St James's Park, it's not somewhere you want to go to play your first game of the season. So Newcastle were good, but it might have been even more about Villa being bad, especially defensively. They've got fixtures which are not nice on paper. They play Man City next, then Liverpool, then Brighton. Doesn't get much worse than that. So I'm quite happy to wait. Trippier is probably the one that interests me most. The attackers, you've got Isak, you've got Wilson. We've seen them sharing game time at the weekend. You've got Barnes, you've got Gordon. They're going to share game time also. So I just don't like the rotation there. I'm probably going to go for players from other teams and try and get those 90-minute men like your Watkins and a few players elsewhere. So until the Newcastle fixtures improve, until they get through City, Liverpool and Brighton, so it's probably game week 5 before I'm going to look at any Newcastle assets. Hopefully they do continue to put in good performances, because we do want to be shopping there for our FPL prospects this season again. But again, that rotation does put me off. The final question for this episode is from FPL Kakashi. Is the Salah substitution something to worry about for us owners? Yeah, it was surprising to see him go off. I think it was about 76 minutes into the game. Certainly wasn't happy about the substitution. We've seen that before with Salah. I wouldn't be worried. If I owned him, I don't think it's a big issue. He got 76 minutes. It's Bournemouth at home in Game Week 2. The plan, I'm sure, if you have him, is to captain him in Game Week 2. And if I owned him, and that was my plan before the season started, my plan wouldn't be changing. Unless there's specific comments this week or anything that puts me off, I would be going ahead with a plan, and I would captain Salah against Bournemouth. Moving on to transfers and captaincy for the weekend. Like I said a few times, the plan was to bank the transfer. I don't think the Gabriel benching will change that. Still plan to bank it and reassess things with 2 free transfers in Game Week 3. And thankfully, I've got no other issues to deal with just yet. Captaincy, I don't own Salah for Bournemouth. I do think he's probably the best captaincy candidate this week. So I'll be on Haaland at home to Newcastle. And to me, that feels absolutely fine because it's Erling Haaland, it's Manchester City. Yes, the fixture's not fantastic, but that was the decision I made going into the season. I wasn't going to have Salah for Game Week 2, so So I've just got to get through it and pretend that Liverpool have a blank this week like Burnley and Luton. Elsewhere for captaincy, not that I would recommend going anywhere else other than Salah or Haaland. You could look to Saka away to Palace. Although Palace are a decent defensive side. They got the clean sheet game week 1. And one of the reasons I went for Johnson as my goalkeeper, because I was looking at some stats during pre-season. Crystal Palace were the 4th best team defensively for expected goals conceded last season. So never too keen on a captain away to Crystal Palace. And you've got Watkins at home to Everton. Good fixture on paper, but again, I wouldn't go there over Salah or Haaland. The bus team for Game Week 2 is looking like Turner in goal against Sheffield United with Johnston on the bench. A back three of Estupinan, Chilwell and currently Gabriel, but I'll need to weigh that up with Luke Shaw against Tottenham. I'll see what the press conference updates are on Thursday and Friday, and we'll come back to that one in Friday's episode. Saka, Martinelli, Bruno and Rashford, as long as the United guys get through the Monday night fixture unscathed. And up front it'll be Haaland captain, Watkins and João Pedro. That is it for the first episodes of the season, where we've had some games to actually talk about. Thank you for taking the time to listen, folks. If you're not interested in the Patreon stuff, you can also buy me a coffee instead at buymeacoffee.com/FPL General. I'll talk to you again on Friday after the pressers. Have a great week.